Guys, welcome back to another video. It is a dark, rainy day here today. It's also very hot and humid, so I apologize if I look a little sweaty. But I thought it would be fun to sit down today and share with you my top 10 3DS games. So my list might seem a little weird to some people. The 3DS is a system that I have a lot of very fond memories with, but it's also a system that during its era, for whatever reason, I was in high school and college, and I was having a really hard time focusing on one game at a time. Not even one game at a time. I was just having a really hard time seeing a lot of games through to the end, especially if they were longer. So there were a lot of amazing JRPGs on the 3DS, and many of them I started and never finished. So I'm trying to mainly just keep games in this top 10 list that I've actually played all the way through to the end, and that I have a lot of fond memories with. So with that out of the way, I'll talk about JRPGs another time. Honestly, the 3DS is just one of those systems that I bought a lot of games for as they were coming out, and like I said, I would start a lot and just not finish them. Thankfully, I never got rid of any of them, so there's a lot that I want to get back to eventually and finish, so I'll talk about those in another video. But anyways, today, let's focus on my top 10 3DS games, starting with number 10 here, I guess. This is a bit of a weird one, but we have Pilotwings Resort. Back when the 3DS first came out, this was the game that I picked up at launch. And if any of you guys were into gaming back then, or you got the 3DS at launch like I did, you might remember that the 3DS's launch was very, very dry, very sparse for a long time. And I'll never forget, I had 3 games that I picked up with the 3DS. Well, first I got Pilotwings Resort, and then I was like, I need more. So I got Nintendogs, and I also got Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. But out of those 3, which were the only 3DS games I had for the longest time until another game on this list came out, the one that I played by far the most was Pilotwings Resort. I absolutely love this game. I haven't gone back and played it since it first came out, but I remember just being blown away by the graphics, because obviously at that point, you know, I was just coming off the original DS, and I was really blown away by what the 3DS could do in terms of graphics and stuff. And this game was a lot of fun, and back then I had never played the Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64 Pilotwings games. You didn't really need to, and I thought it was cool. You could play as your Mii in this game, and you have all these different vehicles. You're doing all these missions that all involve flying and hitting targets and exploring the island. At one point you can just kind of fly and explore the island to your heart's content, and there's all these secrets to find, and I was really impressed, and the 3D was great. This was a really fun one for me, and honestly, if I ever do something like a month of 3DS like I used to do with the Game Boy, which I would like to do someday, this is definitely a game that I would like to revisit, so that's my number 10. Alright, and next up here, we have one that I don't see many people talk about, and that is Pokémon Super Mystery Dungeon, which is the last Mystery Dungeon game that we ever got that wasn't a remake. We got that remake on the Switch, which I enjoyed. Still prefer the original there. But this was the last original Pokémon Mystery Dungeon game, and no one really talked about it. And I'm guilty of that too, because I actually didn't pick this one up at launch, even though I consider myself a huge fan of the Mystery Dungeon games. I don't know. I just was like, yeah, cool, new Mystery Dungeon game, and I didn't get it right away. Thankfully, I picked this one up at a GameStop when the 3DS was still, you know, in its life cycle, and I found it complete in box, which, like, thankfully it was before 3DS games started getting really expensive. But anyway, this game's really cool, and I think a lot more people need to try it out, even if, you know, you just download it with your modded 3DS or whatever you gotta do, because it is like the most streamlined Mystery Dungeon game. The way it works is, instead of other Pokemon joining your team randomly like they did in the old games, in this game you do missions for Pokemon and you rescue them or whatever in the Mystery Dungeons, and then they join your team that way. So you don't just have to go into a dungeon and grind and grind and grind to get a Pokemon you want. Now you can select them on this menu screen where it's like, oh, I want this Tyranitar to join my team or something. I'll do this mission for him. I'll go save him or fight him or whatever you have to do. And then he joins your team. And it's really cool to be able to build your rescue team that way instead of just relying on random chance, which is also fun in its own way. But I liked that aspect of this game. Unfortunately, I know I said I was going to focus on games I've beaten. This one I actually never finished just because these games are so long, but I do want to either start a new game eventually and play it through beginning to end, or just continue my old save file. But I highly recommend this one. If you guys haven't checked it out, play it any way you can. It's definitely worth it. All right, and next one here, what are we on now? Number 8. I swear I'm gonna mix these numbers up at some point in the video, but I'm gonna try not to. Number 8. This is a funny one. I have Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, or Luigi's Mansion 2 as some regions may know it. The funny story here is I was so hyped for this game. The original Luigi's Mansion is, as some of you may know, that's my favorite game of all time. And I was so hyped for Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. I don't think I've ever been this hyped for a game, for a sequel in my life. And it finally came out. I got the game, and I didn't like it. I was quite disappointed by it, actually. I kind of forced myself to play through it. I wasn't loving it the whole way through. I was really annoyed how you couldn't just explore the mansions freely. You kept getting, taken out. It was all level-based and stuff. And I really had a negative view of this game for the longest time. Until just, I believe it was just last year, I made a video talking about it, how I had replayed it, and how I started enjoying it more than I did originally. And now I'd say, yeah, it sits comfortably in my top 10 games on the 3DS. And then it's funny, right after I made that video, there was a Nintendo Direct, and they announced they're remaking it for the Switch, so I'm excited for that. I'm curious to see what kind of things they change in the remake. It would be cool if they let you explore the mansions more freely. I would really like that, but if not, it's not a huge deal. But yeah, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, I made that whole video talking about it. If you guys want to hear more of my story, my personal story with the game, I'll go further into depth in that video. But here, yeah, I'd say it sits comfortably at number 8. I replayed it a year ago, and I do enjoy it a lot more now. I kind of see it more for what it is, rather than just seeing it as a disappointing sequel to my favorite game of all time. But yeah, I'd say it's not as bad as I used to say it was. I do enjoy it now. And anyways, now we're at number 10, 9, 8, 7. 7, just to show you guys how bad at simple math I am. Number 7, here we have Pokémon X. Pokémon X, sorry, I'm scratching my nose. Pokémon X, I have so many fond memories with this game. It's not even close to being my favorite Pokemon game of all time. I don't even know if I wouldn't even say it's the best Pokemon game on the 3DS, because you also have the Ruby and Sapphire remakes, you have Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon. They're all good in their own way. I really didn't start hating on Pokemon until like the Switch era, which I think a lot of you can understand why. But the Pokemon 3DS games, I think, while they're not as good as the older ones in my opinion, they're all very solid entries, but Pokemon X and Y I have very fond memories with. It was the first 3D mainline Pokemon game. Me and all my friends went to the midnight release. We had a sleepover, we were trading Pokemon, staying up late. It was all very exciting. I was only 14 or 15 at the time, so it was just that, we were just the perfect age for that. And, I still love Pokemon. I'm actually playing through Pokemon Crystal right now. It's not that I don't like Pokemon anymore. It's just that as the games have gone on, I just don't enjoy them as much for various reasons. But X and Y were cool. They were exciting. I found my first ever, full odds shiny Pokemon in this game. I found a shiny Dwebble, and I remember I was just walking around, he popped up, and I kind of wasn't really looking at the screen, and I was like, because Dwebble's one of those Pokemon where his shiny isn't super different from his original colors, and I was like, I think that's shiny. I didn't have the sound on, so I didn't hear the sparkly sound or anything. I was like, I think that's shiny. I'm just gonna catch him just to make sure. Thankfully I didn't, kill him and never see him again, but I caught him. And yeah, Dwebble was my first full odds shiny Pokemon, and that's a really fond memory that I always have. Another fond memory I have with Pokemon X is I had a friend who was shiny hunting for a Charmander. He was, breeding Charmanders and trying to get a shiny, and he was telling me about it. And this is I'll never be able to recreate a situation like this ever again. But I went home and I was like, it'd be cool if I got a shiny Charmander. I walked into the Friend Safari because one of my friends on my 3DS, their Friend Safari was fire types. I walked in and my first encounter, I kid you not, was a shiny Charmander. And I told my friend about it and he hated me. But I had that, and I put that Charmander on my team, He's a shiny Charizard. Now I'll throw some footage up of him just to prove that he's legit. But yeah, I didn't do any cheating in these games. It was all legit, and yeah, I found my first few shinies in Pokemon X. So that'll always be a really fun memory with this game for me. All right, and next up here, number 6, we have, and I'm kind of starting to realize this now, most of these games are from like earlier in the 3DS's life, because it was later on where I was getting a lot of RPGs and not finishing them. It was a whole thing, but I'm going to get back to them one day. This next one here is Kirby Triple Deluxe. Now this was another one that I didn't pick up on day one, and I don't know why. Like, I just wasn't particularly excited for it. It was at a time where I feel like Nintendo was just making a lot of 2D platformers, and I was kind of starting to get burnt out on them. Especially like in the Wii era, I feel like I played a lot of 2D platformers, so I didn't pick it up right away. And then I started watching some reviews of it, and the reviews weren't really saying it was that amazing or anything, but I remember thinking, this looks like a solid Kirby game. Like, there's no real gimmicks or anything. It just looks like a classic Kirby game. So I got it, and I ended up loving it. I'd say it's probably one of my favorite Kirby games of all time. It's definitely one of the most solid 2D Kirby games that you can get still to this day. You really can't go wrong with any 2D Kirby games, but this one in particular is just so colorful. They're all colorful, honestly. That's such a generic comment that I just made, I'm sorry. But it's true. I mean, it's a really nice looking game for the 3DS. I loved collecting the little keychains and stuff. They had like this gacha mechanic where you collect keychains and little collectibles, and it was cool to just see all these classic little pixel Kirby enemies that you can collect, and just a solid game. That's really all I have to say. I played through it, and it was just great. But not as great as number 5 here, which was the follow-up that came out a bit later in the 3DS's life cycle, which is Kirby Planet Robobot. Honestly, these two Kirby games, thinking about it now, they're probably my 2 favorite 2D Kirby games. Planet Robobot is so cool. Kirby hops into a mech, and not only is it a mech, but it's a mech that can copy enemies' abilities just like Kirby can. So you can imagine the fun, endless possibilities and variety in gameplay with all the different power-ups you can get. And it's just so cool. And looking back at it now that I'm more like into mecha anime and stuff, like back then I didn't really care about that. I feel like replaying this one now, I'd be like geeking out over like all the different mech designs, because I just like the look of robots and mechs now. I don't know if it's because I'm older and I just think that stuff is cooler now, but this is such a cool game, such a unique idea if you really think about it. Like, what if they had a game where Mario hopped into a giant robot, you know? Like, it's such a specific idea, and I think it's so cool that they made a whole game out of that with Kirby. So yeah, man, Planet Robobot, another one. I don't know if it's getting up there in price or not, but you know, with what you can do with modding nowadays, it's pretty spectacular. So play this game any way you can. It's definitely worth it. If you play one Kirby game for the rest of your life, and that's all you want to play for some weird reason, check out Planet Robobot. It's a really, really good game. All right, next up here, number 4. We're in the top 4. I don't know why I am making top 4 sound like it's something so significant. I should have been like top 5. Here we go. But anyway, next up we have, and this is I'm such a generic loser, but here's Super Mario 3D Land. This is another game. There were a lot of games like this on the 3DS that I didn't like at first. There was a lot of games on the 3DS that I went into really hyped and then felt a little bit let down by. But now that some time has passed and I have these nostalgic memories with them, now I appreciate them a bit more. This is absolutely one of those games. I think the only thing was I was hoping for a bit more of like a traditional 3D Mario game like 64, Sunshine, and my favorites, which are the Galaxy games, which I know those aren't as open as the previous ones, but I just like them from an aesthetic standpoint. But Super Mario 3D Land, what it really is, and you've probably heard this a million times on the internet, but it's 3D Mario crossed with 2D Mario, where the levels are linear, but they are 3D. Very similar to the classic Crash Bandicoot games, which I have also fallen in love with the Crash Bandicoot games over the years. So that kind of linear 3D level design, I like it a lot more now than I might have back, 10 years ago when this game originally came out. But I do have a lot of fond memories playing this game. It was really the first big new game on the 3DS, because you know, we had some other big games that I'll get to that, but you know, they were remakes. If you were, you know, into the 3DS back then, you probably already know what I'm talking about. But yeah, Super Mario 3D Land, it's just, you know, you can never go wrong with any 3D Mario games. As much as, you know, nerdy fans like me would complain about, oh, they're generic or whatever, I don't really have strong feelings like that anymore. I just enjoy all the Mario stuff that comes out. But this game's a lot of fun. I 100%ed it back in the day, so I have fond memories doing that. And then I remember giving my copy to my sister, and this was like the first 3DS game that she played, and she loved it too. And yeah, it's just a nice, fun game. I go back and play this one from time to time, and it holds up really well. And yeah, it's just a good pick up and play 3D Mario. All right, top 3. You know, I'm looking at my top 3 picks, and I'm like, yeah, these are solid, but the 3DS really did have so many games. Like, yeah, these are my top 10, but like, if you ask me on a different day, it might be different, but these are what I'm feeling today. So number 3, we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, which is the weird, like, remake, but also kind of sequel of A Link to the Past, which was the Zelda game on the Super Nintendo, which I love. Played it a long time ago on an actual Super Nintendo, which is such a cool memory, because I was really into retro games in high school, even though like the Super Nintendo really was before my time. I always had an appreciation for old games, even when I was younger. But yeah, A Link Between Worlds is like, it's classic 2D Zelda, but with a modern twist. And it's really good, and I remember getting this game around the time that I got my 3DS XL. My first one, which was the Pokemon, it was the red Pokemon X and Y edition 3DS XL. I do still have it. I never got rid of any of my 3DSs that I bought, which I'm so happy about because they're all so expensive now, and it's scary, especially here in America, right? So I have such fond memories of getting this game, playing it on my 3DS XL, which I had just kind of gotten around that time, and just blasting through it. Like, I played through it. It was, oh, I remember now. It was my Thanksgiving break, I believe my senior year of high school, and I played through this game, and just those memories of, you know, being at my parents' house, and it was cold outside, and just having this game. And yeah, I haven't played it since, but, you know, it will be a good one to replay one day. But such a solid game. Another one, just play it any way you can. If you can't get your hands on a physical copy, you know, you'll figure something else out, as I've mentioned before. But yeah, definitely a good one to try if you haven't played it before. All right, number 2 here, we have The Legend of Zelda, another Zelda game, Ocarina of Time 3D. Now, this game was really special to me because when it was announced back at the same time that the 3DS was announced, I was just getting into Zelda. I was going back, because, you know, early YouTube days, I was watching a lot of videos and learning about a lot of series that I had missed out on and their history and all this. So I was getting into Zelda for the first time. I had just come off of finishing Wind Waker on the GameCube, and I absolutely loved it. So I was like, what is this Zelda series? I need to play every game that has ever come out in this series. So when I saw that they were remaking Ocarina of Time, but I would still have to wait for it for a bit, because they announced it quite a while, at least back then. It felt like they announced it quite a while before it was actually releasing. So I actually went to my local game shop, which doesn't exist anymore, but they had copies of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and I picked up both of those. So I was playing them on the original N64, and in Ocarina of Time on the N64, I got up to the Water Temple, and that's where I stopped playing, because I just was like, I hated it. You had to, you know, open the menu, pause the game, put the heavy boots on, or the iron boots, and, you know, it was on and off all the time. It was really annoying, and I was like, it seems like they're gonna fix these kinds of things in the remake. So I was like, I'm just gonna wait for the remake. So then once that finally came out, I played through Ocarina of Time from beginning to end, and it was the second Zelda game that I ever finished. So first was Wind Waker, then I finished Ocarina of Time 3D. And it was just, it felt like such a big adventure to be having on a handheld device. And that was just such a cool new feeling to me because I was playing the original on the N64 and then seeing the huge graphical upgrade and all the quality of life improvements that they did was amazing on its own. But the fact that all of that was crammed into this little cartridge on the 3DS and it looked so good and it played so nicely, it just was such an amazing experience. And I was just like, this is the future of handheld gaming right here. It felt like such a big experience to have on such a small little console, especially back then. I was playing on the, you know, the tiny original 3DS, and yeah, just such a great game. Another one that I want to replay because, you know, it's been what, over 10 years now. It came out in 2011 and they still haven't, you know, re-released this version of the game or Majora's Mask remake or anything like that. Like, we have the N64 versions on the Switch, but that's it. So I would love to go back and play it again. But yeah, Ocarina of Time 3D, what an amazing experience to have on the 3DS, and I'll have to replay it again sometime because I just loved it so much. And number one here, this is by far my most played game on the 3DS of all time. I don't know how many hours I've sunk into this game. I know I could check, but I don't know right now. Animal Crossing New Leaf. What a fantastic entry in the Animal Crossing series. I made a whole video on this one. It's a very popular video on my channel right now. And yeah, I mean, what else can I say about this game? It was the first time I had bought an Animal Crossing game, like day one. It was the second Animal Crossing game I really got into because I started with the GameCube one, even though the DS and Wii ones were already out. My cousin gave me the GameCube game. I tell the whole story in my Animal Crossing video, so go watch that if you're interested in hearing the long version of this story. But yeah, Animal Crossing New Leaf, so many fond memories of playing this game with my sister, with my friends, and just endless hours. I mean, like, honestly, up until New Horizons came out on the Switch, I was still checking into this game every day, doing my daily activities, digging up my fossils. I actually completed the fossil museum in this game, so I would just log in every day, get my fossils, sell them, make money, do the money rock every day, do the gem rock every day, and, you know, just collecting all the furniture and items that I wanted. This was the first Animal Crossing game that I almost felt like I completed in a way, even though, like, you know, I didn't like have every item or anything. I had a fully built up house that looked so cool. I still need to make that video of showing off that house. I'm gonna do that eventually, I promise. But yeah, man, Animal Crossing New Leaf, absolutely my number one favorite, best 3DS game. I sound like a child describing this right now, just throwing all the adjectives out there for number one, all the synonyms. I'm sorry, but Animal Crossing New Leaf is absolutely my favorite game on the 3DS. Yes. So anyways, guys, let me know down below what your top 10 3DS games of all time are. These are mine, and like I said, you know, it's not super set in stone. I'm going to make other videos talking about more 3DS games. I have a lot of 3DS games in my backlog that I need to get back to, either finish or, you know, play through for the first time. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.